Hey everyone, Amber here from Majestic. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today is another Marathon Sewciety video, so I hope you've been tuning in to all the others. I'll have them linked below in the description. And today we are sewing up the fundamental tote from Joleelee Creations. So thank you so much, Leslie, for allowing us to sew up your pattern. It's such a gorgeous bag. So everything that you see in my bag besides the rivets are available in my shop. So I chose to use red lace for the exterior. I did the hidden D-ring method and I used square rings instead of D-rings. And then on the inside, I used the water resistant canvas. It does have the PU coating instead of the PVC. There's a zipper pocket. On the opposite side is a slip pocket, and you can see the bottom. It's a drop-in lining, and the instructions are fabulous. I absolutely loved making the bag. I usually avoid drop-ins, but this one was so easy to put together. So I'll have timestamps as well in the description for all the different steps, and I hope you enjoy. If you like the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribing. Every little bit helps my channel grow, and I appreciate it so much. Enjoy the video. All right, so I have all my materials cut and ready to go. I am using a red lace for the main panels, and I have interfaced it with some Sewfuse Plus. And for my lining, I have some water-resistant canvas, also interfaced with Sewfuse Plus. I have my slip pocket and my slip pocket trim. These I did not interface. Even though this is water resistant canvas in my shop, it's still pretty stiff without that PVC backing. So I did not interface that. And the same with my zipper pocket linings. Those are on interface. And I have the zipper overlay, my actual zipper, and a matching red heart pull. These are all available in my shop as well. I have my strap. The only change that I made is instead of it going to be 3/4 of an inch, I made it a little bit wider so it will fold to 1 inch. And that is because I have 1 inch hardware. I didn't have any 3/4. So I usually just adapt everything to 1 inch. And I am going to do hidden D-rings. So the pattern shows how you can do hidden D-rings or use Sias Swags connectors. So since I'm doing the hidden D-rings, I have 4 pieces cut here and an interface strip down the middle to make them a little bit more sturdy. And that's why I have the 4 square rings, because I'm going to use them. I also have 4 strap ends and some rivets. So those are my materials that I'm going to be using for the bag. Okay, so as far as tools, I am using this Tex 35 thread from Wizardry Stitchery. It's perfect on my domestic. I use it in the top and the bobbin. I have a 9014 Microtex, a chalk marker, seam ripper stiletto combo. I have this tool here. Leslie does have one in her shop, but I have this one here that helps with the hidden D-ring connectors. A little ruler. This is a water-soluble marking pen, which is my favorite. Snips. A little screwdriver to install the strap ends. Some double-sided tape. And, of course, some clips. If I use anything else, I'll definitely let you know as I go along. Okay, so the next step is prepping all our panels. So our main exterior panels are going to look like this on the back. I'm not giving any measurements, obviously, but both of our main panels are prepared that same way. And the lining's a little bit different. So for the main panel, I use the water erasable. But for the lining, you need to draw lines on the correct side, or the correct side of the lining. So I used chalk. And then on the back for each, you're directed to draw your lines and then label one zipper side and one slip pocket side. So make sure you do that so you don't get the two confused. And once you have everything all laid out, these lines are for our D-ring connectors. So in the pattern, Leslie shows us for the Saya swag connectors, but she also has a link to her hidden D-ring template video. So I have a different hidden D-ring template. I don't have Leslie's. I had gotten this one before, but I'm definitely going to link both down below. So if you are doing a hidden D-ring, and I am doing 1 inch, so I have made my D-ring connectors folded in half, so they'll be 1 inch wide, and then I have this tool here, and you can kind of see it has like a straight line across, and the lines come down a little bit. It's clear, so I'm going to mark them and then show you. It'll be easier that way. Okay, so we are lining it up with these centers here, or where these lines intersect, and then marking. So if you are doing a different size D-ring, you will need a different size template, or you could do these measurements yourself. If you do not have this D-ring, hidden D-ring template, because my connectors are going to be 1 inch, really you're just going to need to be able to split a 1 inch line across. And then what we're going to do once we have that is we are cutting on that line. So just trying to get it through with my seam ripper first, and then I can sneak my scissors, but there we go. And so where it comes down a little bit just is going to help this fold. And now this works for material that has a raw edge, so vinyl or leather. If you are doing this with fabric, you're gonna not want to because it may fray. You need that raw edge. Okay. So once you have that cut out, you're going to repeat that for all 4 of your connectors. So I'm going to do that now and then come back and show you how we add our D-ring. And actually what I'm going to do as well, I am making mine 1 inch. I'm sewing on a domestic. So I did not want to do the 4-fold method. So I have them just folded down to the center, drew a line down the center, folding them both in. So I'm also going to take all 4 of these to the sewing machine and do a row of top stitching down both sides. Okay, so now I'm at the machine. I have a Teflon foot on, which helps not stick to the vinyl. And I put my stitch length at the widest for a top stitching length. And I am just going to top stitch down both sides of my D-ring connectors. I have just finished top stitching one of my connectors, and I have my main panel here with my openings cut. So from the correct side facing up, right side facing up, I'm going to take my D-ring connector with the wrong side facing up and tuck that in to the opening, and it should fit nice and snug. And I have it about a little bit less than halfway on the back. So here on the back you could see, and there's a little tab here. We want to make sure that that is facing in, that is not showing from the front. So now what you're going to do is you're going to do a little line of stitching here where you are making sure that you are catching this main panel. So I actually prefer to do it from the back side, so I know that I'm catching the main panel, and that's so you don't see this hole in your D-ring connector in your main panel. So I still have my Teflon foot set up, and I'm only going to sew where that between this the smaller part of my cut, because if you go too far, your top stitching or your stitching here is going to show. So I am going to back stitch in the beginning and the end, but just not very far. I need to trim my threads from the last time too, sorry. All right, so now we have that stitched in place. So when we fold this down, it's connected here. It's not going to pull away and leave a gap or an opening. You could also sew from this side, but just make sure you're catching your main panel. So for me, it's just easier to do it on the back. So now let me grab a square ring and I will show you what's next. Okay, so it's easier for me to show this right at the machine. So now I have my square ring. You could use a D-ring. I just have more of these. And this has like it's not welded, so there's a little opening here. So I'm going to make sure that side is covered. So what I'm doing is I am adding it on, and then I'm folding this side down and into the opening that we still have. My vinyl's like sticking to each other because of the texture, so, and I don't want to pull too hard. You don't want to like tear it or anything. Okay, so on the back side you could see it's coming through. Mine do not match up. You can trim it after. You could try to make it even. As long as you have enough down here that there's a gap I'm going to rivet after, it is fine. Okay, so my front side will look like this, and you can push it down as far as you want and leave as much showing. So I have mine down a decent amount. So once you have that, we need to secure it. So on the back side, so I'm folding it over, and then you can see that little lip that we have here. We are going to sew along this, and that might be very difficult. You're going to want to use maybe a zipper foot, because on this back side we have that bar of the square ring. So I'm actually going to, well, I'm going to try it with my Teflon foot, but if not, I'm going to switch to a zipper foot. And you are just sewing across here, making sure that you backstitch in the beginning and the end, and that is securing your tab down. This side has the thinner side of the foot, so I'm going to do it from this way and see if that works. Perfect. Okay, I'm just trimming all my threads, even though this will be hidden. You're not really going to see it. All right, so now it is top stitched here. So this also won't pull away. So that's why we are connecting that little tab here. So now I'm going to repeat that for all four sides, so the remaining 3, and I'm going to do the rest off camera. Now the next thing I want to do, and it's optional, is add rivets. So I centered, I have a little mark here. It's about a 1/2 inch centered below my connector. And there's 2 things you could use. I have a hand one that I always use to push holes, but it's kind of hard when it's further in, not so close to the edge. So I also have this Japanese hole punch, and for this I really like it because it's you know, this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, like five layers of vinyl plus interfacing. So you just center it over your mark and then push down. But it does take strength. So it might not be so good if you have trouble or not a lot of strength. I'm able to get it all the way through. So now I have this rivet kit here. It's just from Amazon. I have 2 different ones because I'm not sure what size silver we'll need. Let me try the medium. Perfect. So you only see how on the back here, it only sticks through like the smallest amount. So if your rivets are too long, that's how you get where they bend or indent. So I'm going to put the cap on this side. And now, like I said, I have a cam snap press. I just recently got this. You can absolutely use a hammer and the tools that come with it to set them. I also had an arbor press I used to use, and now I have this. And the dies I did just get from Amazon. I believe they're linked in my store. But yeah, it works great. So I am going to line up the bottom, center it in the die. I already have the largest die on. Yeah, just want to make sure that it is the correct size. So I am going to center it there. And you'll kind of feel it won't shift when it is centered. And then set the rivet. All right, and I'm going to repeat that step for all the other D-ring connectors, or square rings in my case. Pattern calls for a 3/4 inch wide strap, and I only have 1 inch hardware, so I increased my width so that way when I do the 4 folds, it will end up with 1 inch. And I'm using vinyl, even though it's very thin. 4 folds will get rather thick. I know my machine can handle it, even though it's a domestic, but you definitely want to be mindful of that. And that's another reason why I only put a 1 inch wide strip of interfacing. So when it folds, it will still be in that center section, giving it support. And I've also put some double-sided tape that when it's folded will be out of my stitch line. So that way when I top stitch it, it is not going to get sticky. So I'm going to fold both of my sides to the center. We're going to fold it one more time. And you can see it does make it pretty thick. So that's okay for right now for my machine. Sometimes I do like double-sided straps. You could also do this, you know, where you just fold it in half. One edge would have a crease, and then this side you could use like edge paint. I've done that before. There's a whole variety of ways to make your straps. So to me, there's not really a right or wrong. It's getting to know what works best for you and your machine. All right, so before I go all the way down clipping this, I just want to show you, because I'm going to clip and do the rest on a time lapse. So you can see we're going to top stitch down both sides, but before I do that, you can see that this is kind of thick and my strap end is not going to easily go on. I could probably like force it if I really wanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and I'm just going to snip like a triangle in here. And you can see I still have this folded edge. You don't want to go too far or you'll see a raw edge. And I'm going to snip from the other side. And again, you'll see I did not go all the way to the edge. So that way when this is folded, there's less bulk here, and my strap end will go on much smoother. I only have to really worry about that one thick side, but because I have it thinner on the other, it's much easier to get that in. And you have to do this before you top stitch, because once you do your top stitch, you're not going to be able to open it up. So if your vinyl or whatever you're using is very thick, I highly recommend doing that. And so now I'm just going to finish clipping these together. And then I'm going to take both straps to my machine and top stitch along each side. Okay, so now that we're done with the straps, we can add our hardware. But before you do that, just check that your hardware is going to fit through your D-ring. So because I used rectangle rings, I can fit it through. But if I were using a D-ring, I would not be able to, and I would save this for the last step. But because I can fit it through, I'm going to do it now. So this has an opening here. Some people put glue. You can put glue inside because this is vinyl, and so thick. It has quite a tight fit anyways. So I am not adding glue. I'm just sliding this on, and I'm starting on the side that is a bit thinner. And I'm just making sure that I have it centered. And then on the back side, there's little screws, and I have this screwdriver kit here. This piece is not very good, so I have a different actual screwdriver, but I use one of the smallest bits from this kit, and they're magnetic. Got them at Micro Center, a computer store or electronics store, and it just makes it so much easier having that magnetic tip. And so then I can just line it up and screw it right in. Yeah, and then these here have 2 screws. There's some that you can purchase that are strap ends that you like clamp on. Those work great too. And of course there's like all sorts of like decorative ones with different characters or whatnot. So I just have these plain ones in the shop. Okay, so that is what it will look like from the front, and then from the back, all screwed in, and you could like tug on it, and it's pretty secure. So I don't feel the need for glue, but if you had a thinner strap, you might want to. So now I'm going to repeat that for all the 4 ends of my strap. Okay, so I finished up the straps and placed them to the side. We're not connecting them yet. So now we are working on our zipper pocket. So I have my lining that says zipper side, and I have my zipper overlay. So I marked the center of the line that we drew in chalk and the center of my overlay, and put some double-sided tape down where in between where my stitch lines are going to be. This way, again, it won't get stuck on my needle. And we are just going to line up the centers as soon as I get the tape. Okay, so we are going to line up that center point here. I'm actually going to do it this way so I can see it better to show you. And it's going to be lined up with that chalk line that we drew. Okay, and then once it's in the correct spot, just go ahead and press it down to help it stick. If you don't want to use double-sided tape or don't have any, I've even taken like Scotch tape and just kind of like held it down. I don't want to pin it because it is vinyl and it will leave the holes in it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to take this to the machine and I'm going to top stitch all the way around the outside edge here. We're not doing anything with the middle box yet. Okay, so now that we're at the machine, I do not want to back stitch on this. You can if you want, but I'm going to leave my tails long so I can pull them to the back. So I'm actually going to just start anywhere, or if you're back stitching, you might want to hide it in a corner, but because I'm not, I'm just going to start in the middle. And I am going to just stitch all the way around. And then usually when I get to the corners, that is where I will start to hand crank. And just leave your needle down as you are turning. That way you don't accidentally pull your thread too far. Okay, and then once you get close to the beginning, I also hand crank because I want to stop in the same exact spot that I left my tails locked. And again, I'm going to leave the end tails. So it might be hard to see because I'm using red thread on a red vinyl, but I stopped and started in the same hole. So now I'm going to show you how to pull them back to the back. Okay, so I have it zoomed in, so hopefully you can see. I have my threads in the same hole, and I'm taking my stiletto, and I'm turning the lining over, and I'm just tugging on the thread here. Sorry, you can see. I'm just tugging on this thread, and you can see that it created this loop. So I'm pulling that loop up. Okay, and then I'm tugging on the other thread. And this loop is a little bit harder to see, partly because sometimes going in the same hole, it catches itself. If that's the case, you can take a needle and just thread it through, which I might have to do for this one. So what you can do is just take a regular like sewing needle. You can see my thread here in the front. And then just thread it right through that hole where the stitch began. All right, so now you can see from the front, you cannot even tell where our stitch began or end. And on the back, it looks like this. So I'm just going to take all 4 threads, and I usually like double or triple knot them. All right, so we just finished tying off our threads. So now we need to cut out this fabric in the center of this box. So I just use a seam ripper to start a hole, and then I take my scissors and cut out the rest. And what I find easiest is just cutting from the back, but making sure that I'm kind of like pulling this up so I'm not accidentally cutting my zipper overlay, but I'm also trimming enough out that you're not going to see any fabric from this front side. Once you have it cut out, just check from the front that you don't see any of that fabric. And we're going to set it to the side because we need our zipper tape and our zipper pocket lining. Okay, so now you need your zipper tape, your pull, and your 2 pocket linings. You can add your pull on afterwards or now. I prefer to do it now just so I don't forget later on. And I always do mine by hand. Okay, and it looks nice and even. So then we are going to clip it. You have your 1 lining piece right side facing up, and you are going to put your zipper tape also with the teeth facing up and just clip it. And then I'm going to take this to the machine and just base stitch at 1/8 an inch along the edge here and move my zipper pull out of the way. That's so I don't get like a little bubble or crooked tape. Okay, so I just basted on my zipper here to one side of the lining. So now I'm going to take my other lining piece, flip this one, open it so my zipper again is right side up, so the teeth are up and my lining panel is right side up. And I'm just going to make sure my sides of my zipper pocket are aligned and clip this on again and repeat for this second side. So again, basting our zipper across the top here. Okay, so now this is a little bit tricky. I have my zipper pocket piece here, and I have it so my zipper is pointing to the left. If you've not put on your pull already, this is where you need to do it. So now the directions call for putting double-sided tape along the top of the zipper and the bottom. I'm not going to do that because I will get skip stitches and my needle hates it. My sewing machine hates it. So I'm going to have to hold mine in place. So what we're doing is you are going to put the tape, if you are or not, and put your zipper opening over the zipper pocket piece that we just made, the linings. So like the back side will look like this. You want to make sure that you are centering your pocket. You want enough side on, enough space on the right and left side. You can sew up the edges. So if you're using double-sided tape, you can stick that on no problem. Because I'm not, I'm going to have to hold it. So we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to stitch along this bottom side here at 1/8 an inch. I'm just going to top stitch it starting here and coming across to the edge. But what we need to make sure we do is that while we're doing that, our zipper pocket pieces, the lining pieces, need to be flipped upwards. Because if you are sewing them with them down, you are going to make sure that your zipper pocket piece is sewn together. So by putting them both up, when we stitch here, we are just going to get a nice seam on the inside and our pocket will still open. Because I'm not sticking this, I'm going to have to hold it when I go to the machine. Okay, so I have my Teflon foot, and because the right side is smaller, I have to make sure I use that as my guide. So here's my pocket piece, and how I'm going to do this is I'm going to slide this under first, under my presser foot, and then slide my lining piece over it. And by doing that, my pocket is already facing up. So both pieces are facing up. I know they're not going to get sewn together. I'm going to pull my zipper full so it's between. And then I need to make sure that my zipper pocket is centered or mostly centered. So I will have no trouble closing up the edges afterwards. And now I also am going to tie my threads off in the back again. So I'm going to start a little bit past the edge and put my presser foot down, hand crank it in, and then I just hold this as I go along and hope for the best and try to keep this zipper as straight as possible. If you're using the double-sided tape, you won't have trouble with that because your zipper will be stuck in place. Okay, I just top stitched across, made sure my pockets were facing up, so that way when this opens, I know that they are not sewed closed. I have my long tail, so I'm going to flip this to the back and do the same process. So now that those are tied off, we are going to flip it back, and I'm going to flip my pocket lining pieces down. And again, your zipper tape should already be stuck. Mine isn't because, again, I didn't use that double-sided tape. But now I can take this to the machine, and basically I'm going to start this way, leave my tail long, start where my thread is here. So down the side, all the way across the top, and back down the shorter edge, stopping in this end piece right here, and I'm going to pull my threads back. And you can leave your pocket pieces down. You don't want them up because if you have them up, you'll sew it closed. So make sure they're down, and then you can bring it to the machine. Okay, again, so I just top stitched all the way around. I have my long threads. So we're going to repeat the same process on the back, tying them off. Okay, so I just finished tying them off on the back. So now you can take some scissors and just trim your pieces so they are even at the bottom. And then we are going to flip it over to the correct side. Definitely open up your zipper pull, stick your hand in. Just make sure that your pocket is not sewn shut. I have definitely done that before. Once you check to make sure that is not sewn shut, we are going to take this in the machine and we're going to flip our right hand side up. It exposes the pocket. So we are going to sew down this right hand side, flip the bottom up, so along the bottom of the zipper pocket lining, and then back up this other side, and that is going to completely seal our pocket closed. Okay, so we have just stitched our pocket closed. You can trim off your excess zipper, or if you want to also trim your seam allowance. Sometimes I leave it just to give myself, to make sure that it's not going to fray or come undone. So once you do that, you can set this aside and we're going to start on our slip pocket. Okay, so now we are working on our slip pocket. So we have our lining piece or slip pocket piece, and it becomes our lining and outside edge. So if you are using directional fabric, you want to be mindful of that. So I am folding it in half, and we're just clipping the edges, what were the long edges now become the short edges. And then I'm going to take it to the machine and sew along each of these clipped edges at the seam allowance given in the pattern. Okay, so we have our slip pocket piece sewed down the sides. So we are going to just kind of trim this edge at an angle. We don't want to cut our stitch line because that will make it fall apart. But this is going to help it turn and sit a little bit more smoothly. So then we are going to turn it right side facing out. Have it right sides facing out. You can iron it to help it sit smoothly if you have a fabric that you can iron. And I'm taking just like this chopstick and pushing out the corners. So now you're going to take it to the machine and just base stitch this closed along the top here. Okay, so now I have my slip pocket basted closed at the top, and I have my slip pocket trim piece. I drew the line that's given in the pattern, and I've added some double-sided tape. So I'm going to pull up the tape, or the backing to the tape. Okay, so once you have your tape pulled up, you are going to take your slip pocket piece, and you are going to line it up with that line. Now, whatever this back side is going to be the front of your pocket. So if you have directional fabric, you want to be mindful of that. So I want these hearts to be, or the solid hearts to face down. So I need to make sure that when I'm looking at it like this, they're correct. And then it will be different when I flip it up. So I'm going to center this along the middle blue line that I drew and have it stuck on that double-sided piece of tape. And that double-sided tape is going to be out of my stitch line. And then once you have it stuck, you are going to fold it down. Okay, and you can see that it's a little bit wider. That's so we can trim it after. And I'm going to take this to the machine and top stitch along this line here. And you could either pull the threads to the back, but I'm just going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Make sure that you're back stitching above or on the slip pocket trim, but above where this pocket starts. If you do it over here, we're going to cut that off and it's going to cut off your back stitch. So you want to start where the pocket is and end where the pocket is. Okay, so I have just taken it to the machine and top stitch across the edge here. So now I am going to take a pair of scissors and just trim the excess off. Okay, so now we have our slip pocket that we've made and our slip pocket lining piece for the main bag. And I have marked my center in chalk. And I have also, it's hard to see, but there's a faint chalk mark here in the center. So I'm going to line them up. And if you are using a material, I probably could put a pin in this because it's water resistant canvas. You can pin them, or I've even again used tape to hold them in place. And we are going to bring this to the machine and we are going to stitch around the two side edges. So around this side here, along the bottom, and then going up this other side. And I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end as well. You could also, again, tie off your threads in the back, but it blends so well that I'm not going to do that for the slip pocket. Okay, so I have just stitched around all three sides of my slip pocket. And you could leave it open if you want, but the directions call, and I'm also going to, I drew a center line with chalk. So I am going to stitch a line here and you want to backstitch at the beginning and the end. I'm not going to go up onto my slip pocket trim because I'm going to put a rivet there. So I'm going to go just along that chalk line. Okay, so I have just put my stitch line down the middle here, and I have marked my 3 spots for rivets, and I'm going to add the rivets in here. Okay, so I had just added the rivets, and I just wanted to show you, I used my smallest rivet, but they still were a little bit long. So on the back side, I just used some scraps of waterproof canvas to fill in the length, so that way they wouldn't like crush or dent. Alright, so we just finished up both our pockets with our lining. So now we are going to sew our lining together, and I'm going to line up the bottom. We're going to clip the bottom first and sew that before we do the sides. Okay, so I'm clipping here, and I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and sew at the given seam allowance across the bottom. Okay, so I just finished the seam at the bottom, and now we are going to open up our lining, and we're going to butterfly this seam open underneath. So we're opening it to each side, and we are going to top stitch down one side and then back the other. So what I'm doing is I'm just lining it up first, and then I stick my hand underneath and use my right hand to open up the seams. So now we are going to put it right sides together and clip both of our sides. And we're going to take this to the machine, and we're sewing down the edge. But because this is our lining, we want it slightly smaller than our exterior. So we are going to start at the given seam allowance here, and then grade in and increase our seam allowance as we go down. But we need the top to be at the given seam allowance in the pattern, so that way when we put it together, it will fit nicely. So I'm just clipping the other side, and then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and sew down each side. Oh yeah, so we have just sewed down each side of our lining, and now we need to box our corners. So I'm going to stick my hand inside my lining and use it to prop this open, and I'm going to open up my seam allowance on the side here, and I'm going to line up this side seam allowance, the center, with the center of the bottom of our lining. So I'm going to clip that first, and then the sides, and they should line up perfectly. Everything should match up nicely. And we're going to repeat that for the other side, and then bring it to the sewing machine and sew at the given seam allowance across the bottom. Okay, so we have just finished sewing our sides, and now we just need to trim down our seam allowances. So we're going to do that for the box corners as well as the sides of our bag. The only thing we want to make sure is that we are not trimming all the way to the top. We want to leave a little bit at the top, so that way when we are doing our lining, dropping it in, we can open this up. And do that for both sides. All right, so I've just trimmed down my edges, and we have one more thing we have to do to prep our lining. On both sides, I have just put a line of double-sided tape along the line that we drew onto our lining in the beginning of the pattern. So the double-sided tape is going to help us when we fold this down. So I'm going to turn it this way so I can see it better. We are folding our top edge down to that original line that we drew. Finish folding down the sides and the edges here. You could see they're butterflied open. And I'm just adding, even though I have the double-sided tape, just adding a couple clips on each side to hold it in place. And then we are going to set this aside and work on our exterior. Okay, so we are going to repeat a similar process for the exterior. I'm going to line up my bottoms of the panels, the exterior panels first. And again, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, sew across the bottom at the given seam allowance, and then open up the seam and top stitch it. Are going to put our panels right side together and clip the sides, and we are going to sew down both sides of the lining, of the exterior. The only difference that we're doing from the lining is we are not going to increase the seam allowance as we go along. We are going to keep the seam allowance at the given in the pattern. Okay, I just finished sewing up the sides, and now we are going to box our corners in the same exact way, folding open our side seam and matching it up with the bottom. They're the center of the bottom. And again, just like the sides, we are using the seam allowance given in the pattern. You can see here on the box corners where I did that second row stitching, and that just helps, especially when you're using vinyl, and so that way your seams don't show when it's turned. And we are going to trim down our seam allowance on the box corners and on the sides again. And just like on the lining, we are not going to trim all the way up to the top. And just be very careful. Sometimes I find the bag likes to move and I've almost cut into my stitching. Okay, and then you're going to trim down the other side as well. All right, I have my edges or sides trimmed, and I have my top prepped with the double-sided tape on both sides. And so we're going to do just like with the lining and fold our top line or top of our bag to that line that we drew as one of our. Right, and so once you have your top folded down, you are going to turn your exterior right side facing out. Okay, so now that we have our lining and exterior, I had put mine, like the side seams together and marked the centers. So you can see on the inside where it's not going to show. And I did the same for the lining. So now you are going to place your lining, which should still be wrong side out, into your exterior. Now, my bag is the same on the front and the back. I don't have a preference, but if you have like a bag tag or a clear front, make sure you line up your pocket whatever way that you want. So it's not being turned or anything. So whatever way you put this in, For example, my zipper pocket right now is towards the back, and my lining is, or my slip pocket is towards the front. And it should be a nice tight fit. And what we're going to do is then line up our side seams of the lining and the exterior. Clip them together. And then you should have the centers marked, and you can line up your center and then work your way around the bag, clipping the rest. Arm that comes off, like I can lift this piece off of the machine. So I did that to help me top stitch. If you have just a flatbed, just be very mindful. Could also probably sew it from inside out if you really wanted. So whatever works best for you. And also I'm switching to my Teflon foot, and I am just going to backstitch in the beginning and the end because my outside's that lace vinyl and it really does blend in. But I do like to start my stitch very close to the edge. That way, if it is slightly noticeable, it is not near like the center of the bag. Well, I'm just taking my time getting it set up underneath. Very important to take your time for this part. And then we're just going to top stitch around the bag. I have just finished top stitching all the way around, and it's time to attach our handles. So I have actually attached them on one side already. So you can see that I decided to do 2 rivets, and making sure that the back side of these screws are against the handle. So for example, when I'm coming around this way, I'm putting it up and through and then over. And I decided to do the 2 rivets just because I feel like it gives it a little bit more security. And I'm using a rivet press, but you could use a hammer, you could use Chicago screws, you could sew these straps together, whatever works best for you. And you can see that the rivet is on nicely, and I'm gonna attach the rest of the straps the same exact way. All right, so I have just finished adding the handles onto both sides, and that completes our bag. All right, we have just finished up our fundamental tote. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you watched all the other videos today. If not, definitely check them out. It's a bunch of amazingly talented sewists. And thank you again to Leslie from Joleelee Creations for allowing us to sew up your pattern. Bye!